Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast. You might be asking yourself, what? It's Friday. There's a new episode? You're damn right there's a new episode because after the Bucs were off on Thursday, they returned to practice for training camp on Friday. That means the Pewter Report podcast returns for a Friday episode, which, of course, this show is energized by Celsius. I'm your host, Matt Matera from PewterReport.com. Joined with me is also from PewterReport.com. It is JC Allen. We are matching shirts right now. I just realized that. That's pretty cool. JC, how you doing?
Doing great, man. Another great day at camp. It's great to be out there. Great to see the guys. Great to see Chris Godwin back. What?
As everyone sees on the title for today's show, LFG. You know what that means. You could mean a couple of different things. We'll say let's feel good because Chris Godwin is back. That is of course, the PG version of what Tom Brady usually says, and Tom Brady would probably be saying that if he was at practice today because Chris Godwin was back. And JC, it was a nice surprise because I don't know about you, but I was not expecting that at all for him to just pop up on a Friday, the day after, they had a day off. And kudos to you. I was still in the media room getting some stuff done. You and our intern, Sly, was out there, immediately saw Chris Godwin, got it up on PewterReport.com, that photo, some videos as well. I had a video of Godwin catching some passes. You had the video of Godwin sprinting. This is all great news. This is just fantastic to hear because Chris Godwin, one of the best receivers in the NFL, the tempo of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense, is back practicing from his unfortunate ACL injury that happened in December of 2021. But he's here for 2022. He's practicing. We'll talk a little bit about that. But JC, just the mere fact that he was able to get onto the field today and practice with his teammates is a huge sign for the Bucs' first regular season game that's coming up in a little over a month from now in September.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about, could he go on PUP? Could he go on IR? Well, let's quell those concerns because he didn't make PUP. And there was some talk with, maybe he wasn't going to miss 6 games. Maybe he might not be ready for the season. And they might place him on that short-term IR where you can come back after 3 games. Maybe he just sits out the first game or the second game. Well, I think we can quell those expectations of him missing games because he was out there. He was bouncing around. He was jumping around out there in warm-ups. And then when it came for wide receiver drills, he didn't take part in any 11-on-11s or 7-on-7s, but wide receiver drills when they're working down at the red zone, man, he was cutting smooth, stopping on a dime, like slamming on the brakes, turning around to make catches. It was everything that you would hope to see from Chris Godwin. And they're going to take it slow. They're going to ramp up his work until he's finally ready to 100% go. But you've got to be encouraged by what you've seen. And man, if they can all be ready to go on the field together for week 1, let's just say the Cowboys are going to have a serious problem trying to contain this lot of wide receivers. And that doesn't even get into the competition for the bottom spots, but the top 4, it's a doozy.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I think it was a surprise to a lot of people that Chris Godwin was actually out there. And you can go and look. We have another video of Chris Godwin practicing today on our YouTube channel, so make sure you like and subscribe. You can watch that video. Some of him running, as we talked about, some of him receiving. He also had another one where he was like just jumping up and down, testing that knee. And I was kind of saying that it's kind of how Buccaneers fans feel right now, just jumping up and down and jumping for joy that Chris Godwin was back there. But as you mentioned, JC, and Todd Bowles talked about it after practice, it's like, don't expect him to start, running with the number ones during joint practices for next week when they're against the Miami Dolphins. This is still going to be a slower process. This was, step 1 is just getting back onto the field, which he accomplished today. But, there's still a ways to go. And Todd Bowles said he's still not ready for team activities and everything like that. He ran around today, but running around is way different than running legitimate routes against other players in the secondary, especially when those guys are like Carlton Davis or Jamel Dean, who the arrow is pointing up with Jamel Dean, especially over the last couple practices. We'll talk about him a little bit later. But man, if they can just get all 4 of those top 4 wide receivers going, it's going to be a real issue for the rest of the league. And JC, I don't know how much you watched the preseason game last night, the Hall of Fame game between the Jaguars and the Raiders. It got delayed a little bit because of thunder and lightning. But I remember at halftime, they were talking, and Jason Garrett was one of them. Of course, he was the former head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. And they were talking about the fact that, it's the Bucs Cowboys week 1, and both teams have some questions at receiver just for the mere fact that, the Bucs lost Antonio Brown and they don't have Gronk there anymore as their top tight end, and how important Julio Jones is going to be. And Jason Garrett made this, I don't know, this odd point, and I understand he probably still has a lot of connections and favoritism for like people that he has a relationship with in the Cowboys community. But he was saying like, the Cowboys have all of these issues at wide receiver between, Amari Cooper's not there anymore. Wilson got hurt. Michael Gallup obviously isn't there. They had another receiver that got hurt. But
Washington,
yes, Washington. And it was so odd because Garrett said, he was like, but at the end of the day, I'll still take my guy Dak, like with anyone. Dak with CD Lamb and the running backs. It's not going to be easy against Tampa, but like I'm taking Dallas week 1 over Tampa Bay. And I'm just thinking, you're going to go with your guy Dak, and I like Dak. He's a great quarterback in this league, in my opinion. But we're talking about Tom Brady, and we're talking about Tom Brady with Mike Evans, who we will talk about in a moment. But Tom Brady with at least Mike Evans and Julio Jones and Russell Gage heading into that season, or that season opener. I like that a lot more than whatever Dallas is going to be dragging out for that first week of the season. I like CD Lamb. He's a very good receiver, but like, everyone was bashing Zeke last season, and he didn't play well against the Bucs. I understand it was week 1, but I don't know. I thought that was a little absurd, might be a strong word, but I thought it was a bit odd that Jason Garrett, other than having just favoritism for the Cowboys because of his relationship there,
right?
Weird to say you're going to take Dak over Tom Brady,
right? And you look at the offensive side, they lost a lot of people. Wilson, as you mentioned, Cooper's gone, and they have 2 guys out with injury, and Gallup, who said he's not going to be ready for week 1, and James Washington, who's not going to be ready for week 1. So you're pretty much rolling out CeeDee Lamb, and who else knows? And you think that's going to outproduce on offense from what the Buccaneers have? Yeah, Tony Pollard has done very well in a receiving and a rushing role, spelling Ezekiel Elliott. But the biggest question mark is on defense. Trevon Diggs, for all the 10, 11 picks he had last season, was burnt toast half the other time that he played. So how are you going to stop these guys is the biggest question mark. Like, they don't have the secondary and the cornerback group to match up against. If they go 4, and we've seen 5 wide actually from the Bucs quite a few times with Leonard Fournette or Rashad White rolling outside. Not sure if I'm supposed to say that stuff, but surprise. If they do stuff like that, there's no answer for the Cowboys to match up with them defensively. And that's where I think, you can take Dak over whoever you want, but if you can't stop Tom and what he's got, then good luck, because the Bucs are poised to be able to stop what Dak and what he's got.
Yeah. Another important thing that really you can't match up against is the Fast Brand protein bar. I mean, the Celsius Fast Brand protein bar, protein brands as they got here, it's better than any other protein bar that's on the market. Celsius makes these Fast Brands, and they are delicious. You got the salted caramel peanut crunch along with the white chocolate cookies and cream, and they are absolutely delicious. They taste like candy. 20 grams of protein in these bars, so you are packing a punch when it comes to the protein. Like I said, the taste is great, but even more importantly, it's great for if you miss breakfast, or if you need something to hold you over until your next meal, or you're about to go pump some iron, hit a workout, but you want something in your stomach, but you don't want to be too full. That's where the Fast Brand protein bar comes in. Very versatile in multiple different ways to have it in situations that you're in. And you can go to Amazon.com to make sure that you can order them every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever you want it to be. Go to Celsius.com as well. Click on the store locator to see where you can find them if you don't want to order them on Amazon. But shout out to the Fast Brand protein bars. 20 grams of protein, and they are delicious. Here is the salted caramel peanut crunch, and here is the white chocolate cookies and cream. that's what they look like. Go out and get them and support our fellow sponsors. JC, let's talk about the other two guys that we mentioned that were not at practice. Tom Brady was not there for the second practice in a row. He was given an excused absence. That's all we know. That's all that Todd Bowles iterated after practice. The other guy, he was there to start it. Unfortunately, he got injured about midway through practice, and that was Mike Evans. He left with a what's been described as a mild hamstring tweak, and obviously that's unfortunate. And you gotta, put your radar up a little bit more, get those antennas going. But we've seen Mike obviously play through a lot of injuries, and we've seen Mike, especially in training camp, go through these hamstring tweaks, like all the way back to feels like the last 3 or 4 seasons. Mike usually gets something, at some point during training camp. I'd almost, in a really weird way, I'd never want an injury on anyone, especially Mike Evans. But if like someone is going to get these minor hamstring tweaks, I would rather it right now than say, a day or two before the third preseason game. And then you're thinking, oh my God, there's only a week or two before the season. Is Mike Evans going to be okay? I'd be very surprised if we see him at all over the weekend, just given that there's so much more time before the season. And we saw in mini camp, guys were held out who probably could have practiced, but it was just easier to just let them sit out and get healthier. I think that's going to be the case for Mike. But at the end of the day, when one of your star players leaves practice at all, it's a little bit of a cause for concern.
Right. Yeah. And the Bucs have done a great job with their sports science department in preventing these soft tissue injuries. Unfortunately, it can happen. I mean, it just, you're going out there, you're competing as hard as you can. And especially in Mike's case, it's happened a few times. Some reassuring news. Jordan Schultz came out, who's one of the NFL insiders, came out and said he was told it's a minor hamstring injury and there's nothing to worry about. Telling Bucs fans to breathe easy, that he should be back on the field relatively soon. I would expect them to hold him out probably for the rest of the weekend. There's Saturday and Sunday practices before Monday off. We'll see where he's at Tuesday if he can come back. Wednesday, Thursday starts the practices against the Miami Dolphins before the game on Saturday with an off day Friday. So there's a chance he might not come out at all this next week, and just better safe than sorry. But it's something that's worth monitoring, and we'll kind of figure that out as the next couple of days go on, whether he's there or not. We know usually, even if these players are injured, a guy like Brashad Perriman who's fighting something who's undisclosed, Jojo Azuwu, say his last name, Matt. I can't.
I said it yesterday on the show. I did it pretty well. Jojo, or 2 days ago on the show. We didn't have a show yesterday. Jojo Ozougu.
Yes. He was. He missed practice, and they've been out for a couple days, so we'll see about those. And same thing with Troy Warner, was a new one that missed practice today after he came down with an interception on Wednesday from Kyle Trask in the end zone. So those things are worth monitoring. And just like Mike Evans, when they're back, obviously keep it tuned to pewterreport.com and Pewter Report Twitter, and we'll let you know when we see him back on the field. But good news, reassuring news that it seems like it's something minor, and it's not going to hold him out long. And who knows? Maybe he's working with Alex to do some pliability to stretch that hamstring out, working with the sports science department, and hopefully he'll be back on the field sooner rather than later. But it's no need to rush. It's preseason. It's the second week of football. Like, just let it heal. Let it be fine before it's not week 1 going into week 2 or week 3 where you have these tough matchups right out the gate. Make sure he's ready.
He's probably at the TP12 facility right about now, I would guess. Also, we should point out, we mentioned all the guys that were not participating. One guy that did come back after missing 2 practices, Giovanni Bernard. He was back. Giovanni Bernard. I can't do the tongue roll that Stephen Shea does really well. But Giovanni Bernard was back, which was good, because Keyshawn Vaughn, unfortunately, was not practicing for whatever reason that was. And to go back to Mike Evans, he's in clearly a different category in a situation than someone like Brashad Perriman, who Perriman needs to be on the field to earn a roster spot, because he's in that competition with all the other guys at wide receiver that we've talked about for multiple podcasts now. Mike Evans has his role. He's a future Hall of Famer / Ring of Honor member. So he doesn't need to push himself against like the Dolphins next week, where someone might like Perriman probably has to.
Right.
this also gives another opportunity, again, going back to the fact that Chris Godwin probably won't really be participating much in those joint practices either. This is a great opportunity, whether you're reporters like ourselves, whether you're a Bucs fan or an NFL fan. I think it's going to be fun to see like Russell Gage and Julio Jones as essentially,
The
wide
1-2.
receiver 1 and 2. It's like if you were to take an alternate universe, like all NFC South team, and like you had Tom Brady and Julio Jones, like both in their primes, and they were both in the NFC South at the same time. That would be really fun. And I'm not saying Julio Jones is in his prime, but anymore, he's clearly not, especially with the injuries. But the way that so many people, whether it's Carlton Davis or even Russell Gage himself, the way that they've talked about Julio Jones, just like, yeah, he looks good, he looks healthy, and when he's healthy, he's still an unstoppable guy. I think that'll be very exciting to watch for the practices this weekend, but for joint practices too. Of course, we don't want to look too far into the joint practice future of like who's going to be available and who's not. But I think the idea of Gage and Jones as wide receiver 1 and 2, and then fill in the blanks after that with the other wide receivers. I don't know. I'm interested. I'm excited for that.
Right, and it's going to be a great opportunity. I mean, like you said, don't expect much of Godwin next week. And depending on how they play this Evans case out, not only do we get Gage and Jones, but we're also get a good look, and these other guys will get a good look at some significant reps to try to make their case to earn this spot. With both of those guys out, it's going to give guys like Tyler Johnson, Scotty Miller, if Rashad Perriman can get back, Jalen Darden, Devin Tompkins, all those guys are going to have this opportunity now to step up and get extra reps because Godwin, Evans, and even Julio Jones to an extent, they've been pretty limited with him. Yes. We'll see how much he can get down schematically and install wise, and see how much he's going to be a contributor. But just like with Tom Brady being out and Kyle Trask and Blaine Gabbert getting those extra reps, is going to create extra reps for the wide receivers. And shout out to Giovanni Perez for
thank you, Giovanni.
Tom Brady with the $5 super chat saying too much overreaction of Tom missing practice. I agree. I hope his family is okay though, because it sounds like family related, and not too long ago his mom was sick. So all we know is an excused absence. We don't know why. We don't know if we'll ever get into it or the reasons why. We'll kind of figure that out down the line. But I agree, Giovanni. I think it's kind of a little bit blown out of proportion. If it was an unexcused absence or a second veteran rest day, then I'd be a little bit cautious. But the fact that it was an excused absence, and obviously his birthday was on Wednesday, and the news came out Wednesday morning.
Yeah. I understand. I understand why people want to like connect the dots and things of that situation. But at the end of the day, like Brady is not. I said this the other day on the podcast. Like that's all the Dolphins' issue. They got the fines and the suspensions and all of that stuff. Brady, I understand, was in the middle of it, but he's not getting fined. This is a team issue with Miami. Nothing to do with Brady as far as like controversy of getting suspended or anything like that. No issue with that at all. Nothing that's really going to hurt the Bucs. So as Frank says, maybe a hangover birthday. Could be. We don't know.
Tequila,
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to bring up though, JC, just what you mentioned about Julio Jones and that he really hasn't been utilized too much. I agree with that, but I'm not concerned with it either because he signed on the first day of training camp. So we've mostly seen him just do the short intermediate routes a lot of the time. Haven't really seen him really, book it down the field too much today. He did a little bit, but again, he wasn't working with Tom. He was working with Blaine Gabbert. And, the highlight play that he made, the touchdown against Jamel Dean the other day at practice, that was in the red zone. So it wasn't even like he really went deep or anything like that. It's the same thing with Kyle Rudolph, who signed a couple of days before training camp started. It's going to take these guys a little bit of time, one, to get chemistry with the quarterbacks, two, just to understand the playbook and how he fits. And each guy obviously has their role. So to anyone that really thought, and I'm not calling out anyone specifically, but to anyone that was thinking, oh, Julio right away is going to be catching 40-yard passes down the field and doing all this stuff, that's not to be expected right away.
And I think, too, it's more about Kyle Rudolph hit the nail on the head, right? These guys are veterans. Julio's a vet. Kyle Rudolph's a vet. They're very smart players. It's more about the nuances, right? He's like, I can get the playbook down all I want, but it's more about okay, now I need to go on the field. And what is Tom like in this certain situation? What are the nuances that he likes? If he gets this look, what does he expect from me? And that's one of the biggest things. And one of the biggest reasons why Gronk was so effective was because Brady could just tell by like a shoulder dip or just like by the way he opened his hips up what Gronk was going to do because they had that much chemistry together. And he's got that already with Evans and with Godwin. So it's going to take that time to build it with Julio and to build it with Rudolph. And, Julio was targeted a few times. He hasn't been out there. I would say Rudolph has been out there a lot more than Julio has. But, Julio was targeted today. He had a low ball throw to him, down he almost picked it up out of the dirt. He had a couple good passes thrown to him, a couple bad passes. So it's more about Tom Brady. What's it going to be like when they're both on the field? Because he's already missed 2 practices without Tom there, and obviously the first day. So it's just going to take time, nuances, and getting that rhythm and chemistry down together. But then once they do, everything we've seen from Julio, Matt, I think it's going to be a problem. Problem.
He just needs to be healthy. It's really all it comes down to. He needs to be healthy. And speaking of health, Leo with the $2 super chat, he says Guerrero, he's talking about Alex Guerrero, Tom Brady's business partner with the TB12 method and trainer himself. Leo, thank you again for the $2 super chat. He says Guerrero will take care of Evans. Not worried. I mean, we've seen since Brady got here a lot of teammates and coaches too. Like Bruce Arians has been on the TB12 method. He mentioned that his wife was on the TB12 method as well after she was, I don't remember specifically. I think it might have been recovering from surgery or something like that. But again, it's a medical thing, so I'm not here to talk about it. But players and coaches have been on this. I believe Mike Evans has said that he's been on the TB12 method. So maybe Julio Jones will get on that too. It's all about the health with this team, because we saw how it hurt them last year in the secondary. We saw how it hurt them at wide receiver as well. So that's really the key for the Bucs in order for them to get back to the NFC Championship game and in the Super Bowl. There's one more receiver that I want to talk about, JC, and then, I mean, honestly, outside of like Chris Godwin coming back, I thought it was a day that was especially dominated by the pass rush and the big guys up front, how they were able to get after the quarterback. But since we're on the topic of wide receiver, one other guy that has really impressed me the last 2 days is Jerreth Sterns, one of the undrafted free agent wide receivers, one of the smaller guys, but you would never know it by the way that he can get up into the air. I mean, he is a freaking acrobat when he is jumping after the ball. He made a great leaping, I guess you could say, catch 2 days ago in the indoor practice where it looked like it was overthrown by Ryan Griffin. And it looked like Nolan Turner, the guy that's been intercepting everything, was going to make the interception. But Sterns was able to leap up, catch the ball, take some contact, and also go down to the ground to make the catch. Today, he was a little more wide open. Kyle Trask was throwing to him, a little bit overthrown, and he just went full out extension, Superman. We've been saying that a lot with people diving. He went full out Superman, made the catch, came up with it. I know he's a small guy, but he's just such an exciting player to watch. And I wrote in the Bucs Camp Insider today, which go and check it out right now at pewterreport.com. If you haven't, JC contributed to it. Our intern Sly wrote something in it as well. And I said in the Bucs Camp Insider, there's a lot of competition going on at wide receiver. I don't necessarily know if he's going to make the 53-man roster, but he's a really exciting player to watch. So could he earn a spot on the practice squad? Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's an opportunity as a kick returner as well. But if he keeps making plays like that, I mean, obviously he has to do, get to the grimy areas and actually create separation and make plays. He still needs to do all of that, but he's showing out. He's showing some stuff with these athletic plays, and it makes it a really exciting thing to watch.
Yeah, and then what I think you're underselling that catch in the indoor on Wednesday too. Not only was Nolan Turner right there, he leaped like probably half of his body height. The guy's only 5'7", 5'8", and he was in triple coverage too. There was 2 other defenders around him too. I'm just looking at my notes. He was like they were closing in on him, and it was just an amazing amazing leap for the ball. And I think the Bucs too, they're going to keep at least 3 or 4 wide receivers on the practice squad this year, especially with the rules jumping up, practice squad going from 12 to 16 players, and you can keep vested veterans. So I would expect them to keep a guy like Stearns, maybe a guy like Tompkins if he doesn't make it, and maybe like Cam Brown or something like that. And then one of the veterans, maybe a Brashad Perriman or, whoever it is, Darden, Perriman, Johnson, Miller, if they can get one of those guys back on there, maybe a Vincent Smith who's looked pretty good at times as well. He's a big 6'3" wide receiver. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities for these guys. And we saw how often too the Bucs elevated players last year when they needed to, and with different matchups and different looks. So there's definitely a chance for him to land on the practice squad and potentially see some game action this year.
That's right. You never know when you're going to get your opportunity. It could really happen at any moment between injuries and so many other things that go on. But if you want to bet on who was going to make this roster, wide receiver, or make the practice squad, the best place to go and do that would be with MyBookie.ag. And, you can gamble all year round. Sports go on all year round. But in my opinion, the best time to go and bet is football season. I'll admit, I bet on the preseason game last night. I bet the over, and it hit. So I was pretty happy about that. But MyBookie.ag has so many options for you to bet on. You could bet the over-under. You could bet season-long wins-loss records. Will this NFL team get over the allotted number of wins that they have designed there for you? Of course, you can still bet on baseball. You got run lines, money lines, first inning, no runs, props floor. Nobody gives you more opportunities to win than MyBookie. The prop bets are great as well, whether it's in baseball or football coming up, and of course, basketball and hockey when that season gets going. And getting started is simple. Deposit up to $1,000 and play with $500 instantly. Just use promo code Pewter and claim a MyBookie deposit bonus. Whether you're a diehard fan or a newcomer to the sport, there's never been a better time to join the MyBookie family. Go ahead and sign up today using promo code Pewter to secure your first deposit bonus up to $1,000. Whatever you put in, they'll meet halfway all the way up to $1,000. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.ag, and promo code is Pewter. JC, I do want to talk about the defense now, because I think, again, outside of Chris Godwin, it was all about the defense. And I think it stopped and started on the outside with Shaq Barrett and Tryon-Shoyinka. They were getting to the quarterback a lot. In the individual one-on-one drills, they were doing great as well. Shaq Barrett had an insane spin move, just perfectly executed. He was going against John Hubbard, so a little bit of a mismatch, but just like an unreal spin move. Tryon-Shoyinka set the tone like early on in practice in 11-on-11s, got a sack early on. Then not too long later, Shaq was in the backfield. Akeem Hicks was in the backfield in the quarterback's face. There was multiple times where the defensive line just, devoured the pocket around Blaine Gabbert and Kyle Trask. It wasn't just JCS and Shaq Barrett, but those were the two ones that were like really getting after it. Tryon-Shoyinka later in practice got a sack with Donovan Smith blocking him. So we're talking about good on good, a top tier offensive tackle, in my opinion, in this league. And, he didn't like dominate Donovan Smith on the play. It was one of those, it was kind of a stalemate. And then he was just able to cut inside a little bit and got to Gabbert, and they stopped the play before Gabbert can, even get a pass going. So obviously there's a lot of expectations on Tryon-Shoyinka this year, taking that next step. I think to a point, and it's tough with training camp because you actually can't hit the quarterback. And that's tough for, especially an edge rusher, I think more than like an interior defensive lineman. A little bit quiet from Shaq and Tryon-Shoyinka, I think, up until this point. And then today they just were going, and could not stop. They just kept getting to Blaine Gabbert and Kyle Trask.
Yeah, right. And I think a lot of that too was, as you said, there was some best on best there when it was 1v1, one first unit versus first unit.
Yeah.
A lot of it too was dominated against that second unit, who was shuffling around linemen like crazy on that second unit with Trask and Griff getting a few snaps in there too. John Molchen was the second team center. He got actually absolutely blown up too by Nacho a few times, where it wasn't just getting after the quarterback; it was pressure from the inside, blowing up running plays. And Nacho let the whole world hear it when he did. But yeah, exactly. Tryon-Shoyinka rather. He does. He looks good as advertised. That speed, that athleticism, that strength, that never quit dogging him hustle. Like that play against Donovan Smith where he just, he could have rode it out, but he kept working and got to the quarterback. So Shaq, he had a really nice stunt on Wednesday coming up the middle to get the sack too. It was interesting to see him twist around like that. So they're utilizing him different ways and to get after the quarterback. And so far there's been some success for sure. And not just with these guys, with some of the guys in the back end too. Cam Gill had a would-be today. Elijah Ponder's been putting really good pressure on the quarterback. Andre Anthony had a good pressure today too.
That's the one I wanted to mention. He had a really good first step and speed to the outside, which we've been looking for. I was almost like, oh, who's that? Oh, Andre Anthony, like making a play. Good for him.
Right. So, we're seeing, and this is the thing, right? And everyone's kind of clamoring, well, before, Jensen went down and now it's center, but everyone is clamoring for outside edge help. They need some outside edge help. This is what the Bucs want to see. They want to see those younger guys step up on the back end and see what they have in them against the Miami Dolphins in joint practices, against the Miami Dolphins in that game. And if they like what they see, maybe they don't add an edge rusher, or maybe they do. It's not like they couldn't have. I mean, Anthony Barr signed for $3 million with the Cowboys, and it's not like I didn't think he was the best fit if you're going to bring an edge rusher in. But the Bucs have $9 million to spend. I mean, they $9.5 million. They could have afforded Anthony Barr, and if Anthony Barr is commanding $3 million after what he's been doing, and Carlos Dunlap commanded $8 million, you have to think Trey Flowers coming off in injury and Carl Nassib, who I think are the most likely candidates at this point that can actually come in and make an impact. They're going to command $3 million or less. So the Bucs can afford them. It's just let's get a look at what the guys behind Tryon and Shaq can do. And I think so far they've been impressed by them. And it will be a huge determination if they can continue that next week during joint practices, which we all know they learn a lot more about their guys during joint practices normally than they do a game. Game still is great for situational plays and mental awareness, but as far as what they look like in a as an evaluation standpoint, the joint practices help, and so far those guys have been showing up.
Yeah, agreed. And I do think it's going to be really critical for, some of the other guys like Gill that we talked about. Like, for example, Gill did have some really good pass rushes during 11-on-11s today. But, like, in the individual ones, the knock on Gill is that he just doesn't have the size. He's really fast. He just doesn't have the size. And, that came up in the one-on-ones, which to me is some of the most exciting things you'll see at training camp. So, like, I went over and took note of a lot of it. I'll go down the list of like some of the matchups that I noticed and some of the fun things that I saw. But Gill went up against Josh Wells, and it was just one of those things where as soon as Josh Wells got his hands on him, he was done. He's never going to like overpower someone like Josh Wells, who's the backup tackle for the Bucs. The size difference is just so present there that he has to get that first step or it's over for him, unfortunately.
And I want to hear what because I know how much you love watching one-on-ones, offense, defense, best versus best. So I let you go watch that today. But with Gill, real quick,
you let me. No.
Well, I didn't let you, but I mean, you want to go whatever.
I'm just busting your chops.
No, but I think the thing about Gill too, right? Before you get into it, is he's a down and distance guy. We're talking 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 14. That's when you send him out there because the tackles are going to have they naturally drop back because they know it's coming, right? So they're taking a step back. When you're in that type of situation, it's a lot. It's a much different scenario. So with Cam Gill, core special teamer, plays on all special teams units, and he's impactful that way. But if you're going to use him as a pass rusher, it's got to be where he's pinning his ears back, utilizing his speed. Because as you said, he doesn't have the strength to overpower any of these guys, and that's never really going to be his game. But I'm curious to see your observations from more of those one-on-ones on defense and offense. What else did you see?
Yeah, I'm not gonna go through like every single one, but just some of the things that stood out. Like the first rep was Vita Vea against Molson, and Vea just manhandled him. It wasn't really that close.
That's okay.
The one similar after that, good bounce back, but Will Golson got the better of Nick Leverett. But later on, they went up at it again, and Leverett got the better of Will Golston. So it was a good bounce back from him. Obviously Golston had the most sacks of his career last season. Donovan Smith against Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. Donovan beat him in that one. So Donovan got the better in the individual, but Joe Tryon-Shoyinka got him in the 11-on-11. Anthony Nelson, really good move against Fred Johnson, got the better of him. Two of the things that really stood out was Aaron Stinney and Luke Gedeke really struggled in these. Mike Green beat Aaron Stinney. Pat O'Connor beat both of them. And shout out to Pat O'Connor, Bucs training camp diary coming out tomorrow. O'Connor had some good moves. Like, I don't want to be like, oh, like, what are you kidding me? You lost that? No, Pat O'Connor actually, he's been developing his pass rushing moves, and he put it on display. But Gedeke after was like very angry with himself. So it was just like a bad rep for Gedeke. What else as I go across here?
I was saying with Pat O'Connor too. I was talking to Brandon Walton the other day, who got reps with the first team left guard throughout practice, and he said, Pat O'Connor, he's bringing it every time, and like he'll get me, I'll get him, and it's just like great to go up against him because he brings so much of a variety of things that he can attack you with. So just to piggyback on your Pat O'Connor looking good, yeah, he's getting the notice of the offensive lineman on the team too.
Yeah, had two of his reps. And we're talking about two guys competing for the starting offensive guard, and Pat O'Connor beat both of them. So shout out to Pat for those two good reps. What else? Shaq Mason against Akeem Hicks. Shaq Mason got the better of that one. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka against Tristan Wirfs. That was more of a stalemate. One of those in between ones wouldn't really give the win to either person. Donovan Smith against Shaq, again, one of those stalemates. Nacho beat Gedeke. That's where Nacho was screaming so loud that you could hear it if you were standing in the middle of Raymond James Stadium. And yeah, that was about it. Anthony Nelson had a good rep against Josh Wells to pretty much end it. It was more of just a bull rush more than anything else. He had Gedeke, sorry, not Gedeke, Wells. He had Wells kind of like almost falling backwards. He stood up, but it was one of those like he was already off balance, so the rep had already been won. But it was awesome. I love watching that type of stuff. Wide receivers against cornerbacks is great too, but something about the offensive lineman, it's because I played offensive line and was an edge rusher back in the day when I played football, so maybe I just kind of gravitated to it a little bit more. But it's fun when you see the big guys go up against each other.
We hear the Pats smack too.
Yes. Even with the the thing that they wear on top of their helmet now, it's still makes it a lot of fun.
Right. Yeah. And speaking about that left guard competition, it's the second day in a row that Nick Leverett's been in the left guard spot next to Robert Hainsey. Of course, the first day was indoors, so they're just in spiders, helmets, and shorts. But this was the first day in pads, and Matt, I gotta say, I'm walking away impressed by what I've seen. It's like it's almost having an extra center out there. He's out there. You can see him making the calls, him and Hainsey checking with each other, making the different line calls, passing it on to Donovan Smith. And I spoke with him after that practice on Wednesday, and he said, playing next to Hainsey in that left guard spot, it makes it so much easier because we're both seeing and identifying the same thing. So when the play starts, we both know what we're looking for. We both know where to go. And then even Donovan said having that communication next to for someone who knows the calls, knows and can relay them and communicate them and point out something that maybe Hainsey doesn't see because he's got that experience recently and last year too playing the position is really going to help. And I mean he obviously like you said, he got beat by Will, then he beat Will. There's going to be peaks and valleys up and down. That's what
no one's going to be 100%. Every single play.
That's and it's going to happen when you have a top 5 offense and potentially a top 5 defense going against each other. They're going to best each other. But he had some really good plays. One play in particular where he just shoved Nacho out of the play. Just threw him out of the backfield. So I was very impressed by these guys, continue to be impressed as they continue to learn and grow. Hiccups, of course. I'm not saying they're second coming of, Jensen and Marpet, but I've definitely been impressed by what I've seen, getting them thrown in the competition. Bull says he's not worried about that center spot. That I don't think they're really going to look on the outside unless these guys really struggle, which I don't see it coming. And I think that continued reps and continued building that continuity together is really going to help them once, next week comes along with the joint practices and potentially if he can win that spot, if Leverett can win that spot, it could be a sneaky, good combination between having him and Hainsey there, both two guys that know both positions. So.
Yeah, the Bucs are in an interesting spot, especially when it comes to the center position, because everyone's talking about Treader, bring him in. But the Bucs have to find out if Hainsey is going to be the guy. On the flip side, they have to have a cutoff date, and I think it's at some point in between after the first preseason game and before the second preseason game, where if Hainsey isn't going to be the guy, you can't go on too long and then bring in another player, because that player, that center, is going to be behind the 8 ball too. And they're going to have to catch up, and they might not be ready, like playbook wise and install wise, by the time that first regular season game gets there. So obviously they want Hainsey to do well, because then it saves them money, of course, because they don't have to, sign someone else. And I'm curious to get your opinion on this, because wasn't it a couple days ago, like Stinney got the number 1 reps, and then now they went to Leverett. I don't know if we've seen, correct me if I'm wrong, like Gedeke hasn't really gotten the number 1 reps too much.
Luke Walton was up there, but that was pre-pads. So.
Yeah. And that's a lot of it too. Like, we really got to see, when the pads have only been on for a couple practices, we got to see like a full week of that. But I'm curious if they're gonna keep rotating these guys as the number 1s, or I guess it's still pretty early just to be like, all right, you're our number 1. I think they're going to continue just to keep rotating them. And right now it's Leverett's, opportunity. Obviously, I think the joint practices, as we talked about, will be very telling. And that preseason game will be very telling, depending on who's actually playing. Like, I don't expect Smith or Wirfs to play, but obviously they have to find out who's starting at left guard. So I'd imagine all those guys will be in there for that game against the Dolphins.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think you hit the nail on the head too. I think by the second Tennessee Titans joint practice, they're going to know if Stinney's going to be the guy or not. They're going to have that figured out. And I wouldn't be shocked too to see Leverett get some snaps at center against the Dolphins, or again in the game at the very least at the game, to just kind of test him out as well. But you have to have that certain, okay, we're going with them, or we need to bring somebody in, because the install, the playbook, centers are one of the smartest players in the game. Usually They know everybody's position, and the guys that we're potentially talking about are very smart. JC Treader, if he's still available, and he's the guy they feel comfortable with, although they might not, from certain whispers, or even a Matt Paradis, but he's coming off an ACL tear in November. Yeah. Other than that, I mean, the cupboard's bare. You're looking at Billy Price and Trey Burke and former Bengals cast-offs. Who had
one of the worst offensive lines in the league despite going to the Super Bowl.
Right. So you're not looking at any really good options out there. And I don't think they're going to need to be honest. I think the more I listen to these coaches, their players, see with my own eyes the improvement day after day. I mean, we heard from Bowles himself. He's not going to go up against anybody stronger, maybe quicker, but anybody stronger than Vita Vea and Hakeem Hicks. Yeah. Like, if you can't handle those two guys, if you can handle those and hold your own on continuous reps, because it's not like he's got a bad rep, good rep, bad rep, good rep. He'll stack together some good reps before he gets beat. We'll see. I mean, we'll see. I mean, they got the Dolphins coming. Their defensive linemen they're nothing to slouch about. So that'll be the first big test to see how he handles a different body type, a different style of defensive lineman. and on a different team who's, because these guys watch film of themselves.
Yeah.
And you're picking up tendencies that Vita Vea does. Okay, well, Vita does this. I know that I can do this and use my technique to beat him here. Same thing with Keem Hicks or whoever else is coming. That goes for the entire roster. They're picking up tendencies after practicing over them and watching the film of them practice over there. It's like, oh, Carlton does this when I do this. So I can, if I do this route or this move, I can get behind Carlton Davis and make a catch. It's all over the roster. So getting those reps against a different team in practice are huge. And that's going to be the big telling point where they're at with all these offensive linemen and all the other backup players too, and especially some of the rookies as well.
We mentioned a little bit about that the Bucs have their preseason game against the Dolphins, not tomorrow, Saturday, but the following Saturday. It's the only home preseason game that the Bucs have this season. And, one of the awesome things about going to, a home football game or your favorite team's football game is the tailgating before the game.
Oh, yeah.
And the best beer to tailgate with is, of course, Pirate Republic, which is the official beer of PewterReport.com. Pewter Report is excited to announce our exclusive partnership with Pirate Republic Brewing Company. Pirate Republic is now the official beer of Pewter Report. It's a natural fit. You heard it here. We'll tell you again. The official beer of PewterReport.com is Pirate Republic Brewing Company. It's based out of Nassau, Bahamas, and it's now invading Florida just in time for the football season. Beer brings people together to celebrate life. That means celebrating life in the spirit of the original pirate code, a sense of belonging. The Pirate Republic is a community of people living life on their terms. The Long John Pilsner is perfect for tailgating or having fun at the beach in the Florida sun. The Take No Quarter is the best IPA you'll drink out there. Drop an orange slice in the golden haze of piracy Belgian wit beer and enjoy the pirate life. Pirate Republic beer is available at participating retailers like Total Wine, Lucan's Liquors, Party Liquors, and select ABC stores in the greater Tampa Bay area and is expanding across the state of Florida. Live life on our terms and drink like a pirate with Pirate Republic beer. JC didn't even mean to purposely do this segue, but of course, there you go. You got all three. Wow.
Awesome. These are so good. Like I'm not an IPA guy at all. The IPA is awesome. The Belgian wit is amazing. And then the Long John Pilsner is just so smooth. Like I absolutely love these beers. They're going to be my new go-to. Even I mean, I wish I had found these before they became a sponsor because like they're so good. Like they are really good. I've already
they're good. They're good. Like chilling beer too. Like if you're only going to have like just one, it's a great chill beer. I can tell you like them because the cans are empty. So
well, Scott told us like, Scott was like, make sure you keep a couple of these so at the show on the podcast. I'm like, so I just rinsed them out so they didn't smell like beer and like get all gross and stuff. I'm like, sorry, I drank them all. They're so good. That's why.
No, I got you.
I'm more of a whiskey guy, so like the fact that I finished 3 6-packs in less than a week should tell you guys.
Yeah, I understand. I didn't even mean to like purposely do this transition, but we're talking about pirates and things like that, which of course Buccaneers Pirates as well. But talking about pirates, the Pirates, they usually loot things and take things from others, which of course is what Tampa Bay secondary wants to do this year and improve on the turnovers. And one guy we mentioned in the beginning of the show, we said we'll talk about him later, so we're going to talk about him right now, and that's Jamel Dean. Earlier in training camp, Jamel Dean was dropping those interceptions, the ones that could have turned into a pick six. But we've seen the last 2 days that Jamel Dean is now getting his hands on the football and getting those interceptions. He's gone 2 practices in a row with an interception. Gardner had an interception as well. Carlton Davis, and people don't freak out. He almost had an interception, but it wasn't a drop by any means, if that makes sense. He got right in front of the pass. He collided with the receiver who I can't remember at the moment who it was, but he collided with the receiver and the ball went to the ground. It was almost picked off by Mike Edwards, actually, who had one of his best training camp practices
to
date. But I really think the secondaries come together, and I think it was Jamel Dean after talked about that. They have a quota every day to get 5 interceptions in practice, which I think is really tough if Tom Brady is going to be there.
Oh, yeah.
A little more possible when Blaine's the number 1 and Kyle Trask is the number 2 quarterback. But Jamel Dean's arrow is trending up. I'm still extremely confident in Carlton Davis, and I just think big things are ahead for the Bucs secondary.
Yeah, Jamel Dean, the Bucs, after taking a break on Tuesday's practice, which I think only had 1 interception, they got back to their 2 interception a day quota, which has been pretty much straight through. They've at least had 2 picks. They had 2 picks in the indoor practice with Jamel Dean, and then Jamel Dean getting another one. Just good ball skills and concentration, because if you guys see the video, it's already making its rounds for the Buccaneers on Twitter and on socials and stuff like that. Yeah, it was a bad wobbly ball by Kyle Trask. But what you don't see in that clip is it actually bounced off Darden's fingertips, and Dean was able to track it, come down with it, get up with the wherewithal, and then book it. And they stopped them. Who knows? That could have been a potential pick 6 or at least a monster game, because there's really no one around him, because by that point Darden was turned around. So it's good to see the Bucs continue to get there. I talked to Dean the other day, and he was like, I want to be top 10. I want to be top 10 in turnovers. Like, I want to be a top 10 corner. And if not a top 10 corner, at least top 10 in turnovers, whether that's interceptions, fumbles, something, whatever. And, I spoke to him, I messaged him later on after practice today, and I was like, bro, you manifested that. Like, you said, like, I want to, right the day after I talked to him, he gets back-to-back picks. So, it's very encouraging. He's still seeing time with the number 2s. And Matt, I got to wonder when that's going to stop, because he's clearly been making more plays than Sean Murphy-Bunting, who's been rolling with the 1s. Sean Murphy-Bunting hasn't had any, I don't think he's made any plays, really. I haven't seen him make any pass deflections. I haven't seen him make it. He certainly hasn't made any interceptions. And I see them playing him a lot off the line. Yeah. And he's been allowing these quick turnaround passes to get completed on him. I know they're trying to give him the slot experiments over, and they're trying to give him every chance to redeem himself and potentially take that spot. But Matt, at what point does Dean overtake him and start seeing those reps with the 1s again? Or is it just they know what they have in Dean, so let's see what we have in SMB? What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just as surprised as you with that decision. I do think it is a balancing act of, okay, you can't just pull the ripcord out as soon as like a guy is struggling. Like, you have to see how they battle through and how they bounce back. Like, what do they improve on? So I think you bring up a good point. I think it's a lot more of they don't know what they have with Sean Murphy-Bunting outside, and they know what they're going to get with Jamel Dean. And I do agree with what Tampa Bay is doing in the sense of, I think Sean Murphy-Bunting is better outside than he was in the slot, but that still doesn't mean him outside is better than Jamel Dean as the number 2 corner and playing outside. And it is one of those things, not everything has to be stat driven, but it is one of those, show me what you've done lately. And Jamel Dean is the one getting the interceptions, and Sean Murphy-Bunting is the guy that's getting beat down the field. And it's not always against, Mike and Russell Gage and players like that. He's lost reps to Darden. He's lost reps to Tyler Johnson, guys that are just trying to make this roster. So I do think it's a little bit too early to just say the experiment is done. We got to move on. And I don't want to keep harping on the joint practice, because that's not until a couple days from now. But again, that's going to be extremely important. It's important for a lot of guys, but defensively, short, like in the secondary especially, I don't think there's anyone else in the secondary it's more important to than Sean Murphy-Bunting coming up against different players, opponents, because it just hasn't totally been there yet. And I think we all want it to work for Sean Murphy-Bunting. As we've talked about on the podcast, he's a very likable guy. His teammates love him. They wear the SMB hat. I had referenced that when you and I spoke to, not Zero Grace, D. Delaney. D. Delaney was wearing the Sean Murphy-Bunting hat. Yeah. So he's obviously well-liked by everyone. It's just a matter of, at some point, you have to, the production has to be there on the field. And it is what a view for me, because everyone loved Sean Murphy-Bunting 2 seasons ago when he was getting those interceptions in the playoffs. But, opinions change very quickly, for better or for worse. I think sometimes when he on the run that he went, he deserves to, they should cut him some slack. But how much? At this point, I think he's been given enough of an opportunity where now it's on him to really to pick it up. If he's fully healthy, I know he's dealt with a lot of injuries and probably a lot of injuries that he doesn't say publicly either.
Right.
And I understand, and that sucks. At some point, though, the Bucs have to do what's best for them, and I think that's Dean on the outside. But
Right.
I'm open to look at him a little bit more before we really, come to that conclusion.
I agree, and he's going to get tested right off the bat because Traylon Burks is the de facto. Even if they traded AJ Brown to Philadelphia, Tennessee still has Traylon Burks, who they drafted, and they've got Robert Woods as well, and Woods is a really good wide receiver. So whether Traylon Burks is stacked up against Carlton Davis or it's Robert Woods, he's going to see a tough matchup. He's going to see size and he's going to see speed because both of those guys bring that. So joint practices are going to be big for him. Sean Murphy-Bunting is an amazing person off the field. His mother is an amazing woman, and they do amazing work in the Tampa Bay community. But you're right. At some point, it's a business, and you got to make business decisions. And if he can't start making plays and standing out, he's got to stand out. Because at this point, Zion McCollum has had more standout plays than Sean Murphy-Bunting in practices. And granted, he's not going against the top or competition, but as you said, Sean's been beat by players who aren't Evans and Gage and certainly Godwin and Julio. So, he's got to step it up. I think he's got it in him. We've seen him do it, in that playoff run, and unfortunately, he was primed for potentially a big season, and then that Cowboys game derailed the season. So we'll see what he's got. But I think even if it doesn't come to fruition, I really like what Jamel Dean last year. I've been big on him since the offseason, since last season, coming into this season. The number one cornerback against press man coverage, which is part of his weakness, right? Getting turned around and double moved on the line of scrimmage, kind of turned it around, and he's developed into a really solid player. Now he's making plays in practice, whether they're pass breakups or interceptions. Sean's got an uphill battle to climb if he's gonna take that spot. Otherwise, he's relegated to third cornerback, potentially fourth cornerback if Zion can overtake him during the season. So I mean, there's really not a route for playing time. And I did see him today as a gunner on special teams. So the more you can do, right, the better you can attain a roster spot. Keep a roster spot. And it's funny because we talk about the wide receivers with their trade, will they trade Tyler? Will they trade Scotty? If they're going to cut one of those, would they rather trade him? I think Sean Murphy-Bunting is kind of in that realm too. If they can get quality back for him, especially at a position they need or a quality draft pick, I don't think anything's off the table with Scotty right now because I think Dean is primed to be that guy. And I think they have a lot of trust in D. Delaney, what he did last year, who's been quietly making some plays. And, he's had some ups and downs in practice as well, and I think they really, really like what they have in Zion, and hearing from the coaches and the players, they have some confidence and they're ready to see what this kid can do in the regular season.
Yeah, it sounds like D. Delaney is kind of like that security blanket of what he can do. You can put him in certain situations where he's not really, going to extremely hurt the team, and you could have him in there as just like a solid depth backup until McCollum really performs like the type of guy that they expected when they drafted him. But you talked about, quantity and things like that and quality. And there's no better quality place to go bowling than Pin Chasers, which of course there are multiple locations in the Tampa area. There's East Pasco, Zephyr Hills, Midtown, Veterans. There's one pretty close to the Advent Health Training Center where the Bucs have their training camp going on right now. Their owner, Anthony Peroni, is a huge Bucs fan, a season ticket holder. So you're helping out a fellow Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan by going to Pin Chasers. And ladies and gentlemen, it's really hot out right now. We're in the middle of summer. We're getting to the later part of summer, but we're in August. It's really hot outside. Pin Chasers has the AC blasting all the time. So if you want to cool off, chill out, head over to Pin Chasers. They have different deals all the time, and it's a great night out. They got all-you-can-eat pizza, $1 Miller Lights, all-you-can-bowl, brunch on the weekends. Go tomorrow. Get some brunch. So many different awesome deals. Go to pinchasers.net to see what type of deal that you can get, because there's definitely one out there for you. It's also a great place to book a party for your kid. If you want to host a birthday party for them, they got the arcade room. So your kid and their friends can go and bowl, can go play some video games, and it's fun for them. And also, like I said, it's a fun night out with friends and family. So go to pinchasers.net to reserve a lane or book a party. You'll have a great time. The food's underrated too. Pizza, awesome. Chicken tendies, fantastic. Nachos, great. Like really great. So yeah, make sure you check out Pin Chasers. Multiple locations. It's going to be one near you. Make sure you check it out. JC, as we wrap things up here, really one of the only positions we didn't talk about a ton was the quarterback position.
Right.
Blaine Gabbert and Kyle Trask. What did you see from both of them out there? It looked like, again, Blaine Gabbert, I don't want to say the upper hand against Kyle Trask, but was definitely the better quarterback out of the two today. I'm not done with Kyle Trask, but it was another day that was a little underwhelming, where Gabbert was kind of the Gabbert that we've seen before, completing a lot of passes. He had a nice play to Mike Evans before Mike left practice, and Gabbert was pretty on. Trask a little more all over the place.
Yeah, I think there's inconsistencies in both of their plays. Before we actually get into quarterback, I just want to say Mike Edwards today. You mentioned it earlier.
Yes. Good.
Mike Edwards had a practice today. He had a would-be sack come flying up the middle, and then he also had a wallop of a hit on who was it? Oh, 17 on Gage. Big hit. Like he had a big hit. Keanu Neal too had a big hit on Jerreth Stearns, who we talked about. It would have been a touchdown, but Keanu came in and just knocked it out. So good play from the safeties too. We talked about the corners, but good play from the safeties as well, showing that, thumper, because Mike Edwards isn't known for a guy who's going to lay the hit on you.
That's right.
And he did, and he would have laid the hit on the quarterback too. So two plays, but I've seen inconsistencies in both. I've seen good plays and bad plays. One play, Gabbert hit Grant Stewart in the back trying to throw the ball to Kyle Rudolph, and it didn't make it there. Just hit him in the Grant Stewart right in the back of the pads. You kind of see him flex up a little bit, like, oh, what the hell was that?
Yeah.
And Trask is. This is the thing about Trask, and I know he's had some tough days. I can't fully get a gauge on Trask until I see Trask with the ones, or at least the twos. I mean, he's playing with a third string center going up against Akeem Hicks and Vita Vea and Nacho, and third string offensive line for the most part, with third string weapons that he's using. He's not getting to play with, he got a little bit of time with Gage today, which was good. But he's not getting time with Evans. He's not getting time with Lenny. He's not getting time with the number one offensive line. And I know a good quarterback will make the most out of the situation, but I need to see him with some of those guys before I can say Trask he's not the guy. And until I can see some of those reps and see how he handles himself, so where he's not running for his life or the pocket's not collapsing on him, because a lot of the time it is. I need to see that. So I'm not completely phased out on Trask. I think I've seen a lot of positive things. I've seen him be able to go through his progressions when he does have time, find the open man. We've seen some good playmaking today. He knew the pressure was coming. He threw back-to-back throws. He threw him up, chucked him out of bounds instead of trying to force something. So those are good plays that you like to see. He certainly has got good arm strength to force the ball down the field. I'd like to see a little more zip on some of his throws, especially in the red zone. I think maybe one of those interceptions wouldn't have happened if we saw a little bit of oomph on it on Wednesday's practice. So there's things I want to see. I mean, Gabbert's Gabbert. You know what Gabbert's going to give you? He's going to give you some good plays. He's going to give you some bad plays. A lot of it's going to depend on protection for him and how long he's got to diagnose the field and make the proper play. And sometimes he hasn't had that. Case in point was Tuesday's practice, when he absolutely got peed off and threw the ball up into the stands. Not happy about that. So, there's up and downs from both of them. I continue to see up and downs from both of them. There's been some up and downs from Brady too, but that's going to happen, as I said, and I'll keep saying it. When you have a top 5 offense going against a potential top 5 defense, they're going to get the best of each other. And it's not about that individual rep. It's about what they do on the next rep, having that Ted Lasso goldfish mind and moving to the next play. And that's what I've seen from these guys. And I've seen them not hold on to those reps and continue to progress it. And I've seen that from the quarterbacks too. It's not always there. and it's not always going to be there, but I'm not ready to throw the book at Trask yet. And I think Gabbert is just what Gabbert is. I mean, he's not going to be a starter for this team next year for sure, even if Brady wants.
Yeah, I'm not concerned or worried about Brady. I will say with Gabbert and Trask, I would like to see a little bit more consistency out of them. They've been kind of erratic, and then, oh, hey, there's a nice play, and then kind of all over the place again. What was I going to say? Gabbert, he's steady Eddie. You essentially, you understand what you're going to get from them. Oh, that's what I wanted to say too. With Gabbert and Trask, I think they both, especially today, held on to the ball a little bit longer than I thought. But that's also, at times, that's credit to like the secondary for their coverage. But I do think with all, like, the pass rush was the story of the day outside of Chris Godwin. They ruled the day, the pass rush. But some of that, of course, is with the help of the secondary, with the coverage that they had. I do feel like those quarterbacks held onto the ball just a little bit too much. And, Gabbert will make some nice plays. Trask continues to have really good development with Devin Tompkins, the undrafted wide receiver. So we'll see if that continues. Maybe that'll be something in the preseason.
Sorry to cut you off. That's my point. Those are the guys that he's thrown to. He's not getting those opportunities.
No, I agree. It's, you want to see him get chances with some of the other guys, and it feels like even with Brady out, he hasn't really been given those opportunities. So we'll see eventually if he can get those, or if he's just going to have to roll with the punches and do his thing in the preseason games. Just want to do some, give everyone a heads up for what we got going on next week. Here's the list right here. We'll be going Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday next week. So a little bit of a jumbling of the schedule. Of course, Saturday being the post-game podcast after the Bucs play against the Dolphins in their preseason game. Tuesday's show, the next show, is the Mark Cook tribute show. Of course, we lost Mark almost a year ago. And, Mark was a huge mentor to me. He's the reason I got to pewterreport.com. I wouldn't be at Pewter Report if it wasn't for Mark. So on Tuesday's show, we are going to reminisce about one of the all-time greats in not just Pewter Report history, but, Buccaneers media history. We're closing in on a year since Mark passed, and we will tribute and pay honor to Mark on that Tuesday show. Obviously, a lot of great memories that many people in the Tampa media have about Mark, and we'll be talking about that on Tuesday's show. And then, of course, Wednesday and Thursday is the joint practices between the Bucs and Dolphins, so there will be no shortage of news when it comes to those two practices. And then, as I said, Saturday will be the post-game press conference. So a lot of great stuff coming up for the Bucs and, of course, pewterreport.com. One last time, want to remind everyone to please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe. Subscribe to Pewter Report TV. It's absolutely free. Didn't mean that to rhyme, but it just did. Costs you nothing. Absolutely free. Just it gives you a heads up when we're going live, when we have some new content out there. We obviously have the podcast. We have other press conference clips. We have podcast clips as well. We posted one earlier today of Chris Godwin practicing and what Todd Bowles had to say about Godwin and his brief performance at practice. So just gives you a heads up, a little, hey, new content coming up, Pewter Report TV. So tell your friends, to tell your friends, to tell another friend, to tell their friends, and we can be friends. And then tell those friends to tell some more friends. So that's Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate that. So for JC Allen, I'm Matt Matera saying thank you everyone for watching, and we will see you next week for a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.
Jose Borgales, kicker number 1.
Maybe. We'll see.